Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dad's Gone Crypto. I'm on my own today, and we've got some interesting things happening in the market. So I thought it might be fun to do a quick market update and kind of bring you guys up to speed on where I think we're at and where I think we might be heading. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So let me share my screen here. And what I want to look at is, like I said, some interesting things happening here. So this is a chart of Bitcoin. This is showing us back to the beginning of the year here. And what I want to look at here is these downtrends. So if you take a look here, starting in January, so beginning of this year, we started this downtrend, right here. And it ran all the way down to around April. And that downtrend, you could see it was very clear, came down, made a low in April, and then came back up. And by middle of April, it started making its way up out of that downtrend. And then it started stair-stepping up here, right? Stair-stepping up until we got into another one. So the interesting thing here is that this was about a 4-month downtrend from January to April. And we stair-stepped, got up. And then around the end of May, we started another downtrend. We made a new all-time high and then started from there coming down a little bit. And if you look at this one, this is interesting here. So middle of May, down, we kept kind of coming off of this downtrend. And then right there in July, we made it up out of that downtrend. And by middle of July, we were moving our way back up again to a new all-time high. And so first one was about 4 months. Second downtrend here this year was about 2 months long and made it all the way to a new all-time high again, right in the middle of July there, right? So now we've been in this downtrend. And this downtrend we've been in since middle of July. Monday the 14th is when we made that new all-time high. And you can see we've been trending down once again. Well, the interesting thing is that right here yesterday, we made it, hit the top of that trend again. Today, we kind of pushed up through it this morning, and then we kind of got rejected off of there again. But the interesting thing here is that, what I'm thinking is that probably within the next few days, we're going to be about a month into this downtrend. And let's see if we can get on over the top of this and then, push up to some new all-time highs if this trend continues. So that first one, a 4-month downtrend, then stair-stepped up to new all-time highs. Then the next one, a 2-month downtrend, and then up again to new all-time highs. This one, hey, maybe if that trend continues and we keep cutting it in half each time, then this month, step on out of here and, make it up and go hit some new all-time highs. I have absolutely no idea if that's what's going to happen. I'm just looking at the charts and, saying, hey, we've been cutting these downtrends in half since the beginning of the year each time we've had one. So maybe this, by the middle of this month here, next week or so, we start making our ways to new all-time highs. None of this should be considered financial advice. Obviously, these are just the ramblings of a crazy guy on the internet. However, I'm really kind of liking where we're at right now and these little setups that we're seeing here, and maybe we're going to get a move. So that's not the only interesting thing. Bitcoin's going to do its thing. I still think Bitcoin's got a long way to go this year. And we normally don't make our cycle peaks until at least the end of the year. Usually November or December of the year is what it's been each time in the previous cycles. So if this cycle is the same, I think we can probably look at that kind of deal again. So anyway, that's a, long-term chart here. It's a daily chart going back to the beginning of this year. Really some interesting stuff there. Let's go take a look at another chart here. So if we look here, another daily chart, this is the Ichimoku, if you're not familiar with the indicators here on the chart. But anyway, it's showing us kind of the same thing here. It's just kind of showing in an opposite direction. What we looked at on the other chart was a downtrend that we were in and kind of testing the top of that downtrend. And here you can see we've kind of gone up and now we're retesting right here and, looking for that next move up, hopefully there. If we come out and take a broader view of this here, And let's go take a look at the weekly chart here. So here now, looking at this weekly chart, I kind of want to just take a look back at the last cycle and let's just see if there's any parallels, where we are in this cycle. Because I know a lot of people are saying, oh, this cycle's so different, everything's going to change, and maybe it will. I don't know. There's a lot of institutional investments. Governments are starting to invest in Bitcoin. Things could completely change. I have absolutely no idea. But if we go back and look at the last cycle, let's compare it to this cycle, kind of see where we're at again, right? So if we take a look here, going up in 2021, March and April, we hit a nice peak there. Let's take a look over here to where we were. And here we are in March. We were way down and then came on up in April. And you can see we started, we hit a nice little peak here. But then obviously we kept shooting right back up. This time was a little bit different. But then come May, we still had our normal, it wasn't a huge drop, but we did have a drop coming down in here into June. And then in July, started making that run back up again. So let's go over here and take a look. And obviously we had that run down, right? And then in July, we started making that move back up again, all the way into late August. And then had a little pullback in the beginning of September. But by the end of September, we were shooting right back up again and went and made that all-time high in November. So what are we looking at here? Same kind of deal, right? Came down through the summer, and in July, we made that shoot up there. And now we've got a little pullback here into August. So the question is, are we going to do the same kind of thing here in August, shoot up to new all-time highs, and then maybe have a cool down in September? I don't know. I'm just saying, if you look at this chart compared to where we were in 2021, it's pretty darn similar to what we had then. So is there a possibility? Sure. I think there's a possibility that we make a nice little run up here, just like I was showing on that last chart, and maybe put in some new all-time highs here in August, cool off in September, and make a big run at it for the rest of the year. Is it possible? I think so. So let's take a look, though, at ETH, because, yes, Bitcoin's doing some really interesting, cool things here, but ETH is finally starting to heat up. I mean, Bitcoin has been putting in new all-time highs all the way from, look at this. This is all the way back in 2024 when we, put in a new all-time high, and we've been doing it kind of ever since here, all through 2025, making some new all-time highs, but ETH has not. Let's go back out here and take a peek. So we could take a peek here and we could see that ETH hit its all-time high in November of 2021. And that was just under $5,000. On this chart, it was $48.96. And as you can see, this whole time that Bitcoin started making new all-time highs right around here, and ETH didn't even get close. It got within about $900 of its all-time high, and then started making its dips. Got there again in December of 2024. So while Bitcoin was making new all-time highs, ETH couldn't get to its all-time high, came back down, couldn't get to its all-time high, came back down real hard. And again, followed kind of the same path that Bitcoin was on. But here we have ETH, and today ETH broke $4,000 this morning, and it is back down a bit now. We're down to 39, 33 there, but we did break $4,000 for the first time since all the way back in December of 2024. So for the first time this year, ETH broke over $4,000 again, and is really starting to look strong again. So the question is ETH ready to start putting in all-time highs? And I am of the opinion that it is. So why don't we go take a peek, look back at the last cycle again, just like we did with Bitcoin, and see what we can see here. So if we take a look back here, we can see that in the previous cycle, ETH hit an all-time high back in January 2017, back in December of 2017, ETH put in an all-time high of around $1,400. So we can see it finally beat its old all-time high that was made in 2017 in January there of 2021. Actually, it looks like February when it finally beat the all-time high. And then it went on to go all the way into November when it put in its new all-time high. It was about 200% gain from its old all-time high. And it went from February to November. So let's just look at the last cycle. Let's try to make a parallel here. I don't know if we're going to have one or not, but let's just take a peek. So let's go from February 2025, because that's when it started making its run in 2021 after it beat its old all-time high. So, and then it put in 200% gains into November. So let's just take a peek at what that looks like if it were to do it this year. 200% gains into November from its February high would put us at around $8,500 on ETH. It's going to hit that in November. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But it's just a kind of an interesting look back. Like I said, Bitcoin is kind of following its same path it did last cycle. So maybe ETH will do the same kind of thing. Maybe not. Once ETH finally does break this all-time high of around $5,000, which again, I kind of feel like we're kind of on the cusp of that. You know, I know we just finally broke over. We kind of got rejected at 4,000 and are kind of coming back down here. But it just kind of feels to me like the market's ready. You know, we're in August. By late August, at each other cycle, we had a nice run up. You know, going in and kind of making some new highs here. So let's just, you know, let's look at that. What are we looking at there? Could that happen? And, you know, basically a new all-time high in late August would put us over $5,000. Then if we get that little dump back in September and make that next run, you know, is it possible? Sure. I think so. Looking at that, I think ETH may be ready to make a run, but why do I think that? Well, why don't we go back and take a peek at this chart? And this is the ETH Bitcoin pairing. So ETH against Bitcoin. Let's go see where we're at here and look at some history here. And this is on a weekly basis. And you can see that, you know, we were kind of stalled here for quite a while, all the way back from April. You know, we made our low on the ETH Bitcoin pair in April of this year, and then had a nice little spike up in May, and then just kind of consolidated, right? ETH was just right there hanging basically neck and neck with Bitcoin. And then something happened here in July. And that is when ETH kind of broke out right there in July against Bitcoin. And now you can see we're consolidating a little bit again, but I'll tell you what, this looks like a little bit of a breakout candle to me. And we're very, very close to a bullish crossover here on the EMAs. So in my opinion, and again, this is just an opinion, it looks to me like ETH Bitcoin pair is about to break out a little harder here. And I could see ETH making some big gains against Bitcoin. And that is huge news, especially if Bitcoin goes ahead and puts in an all-time high in August here, then we could see ETH really making some big moves up. Again, not financial advice, just my opinion, but I really like where we're heading. And then the next step from that to think about is that, you know, in general, if ETH catches up and actually starts overtaking Bitcoin and starts putting in some new all-time highs, I think that's when we can start looking at, you know, maybe a little bit of an alt season. I know it's felt so bad. It's felt so down for alts for a long time here, but I'll tell you what, it really feels like maybe we're on the precipice of a big move here. And I'm kind of thinking maybe it's ETH and Bitcoin that shine here in August, little pullback in September, and then you know, that's kind of where I'm looking for alts to really start shining and get a nice run up here through the end of the year. Again, those are just my thoughts, my opinions, my hopes. I don't know. I definitely can't say for sure if we're going to get a big alt season, but it sure does feel like we're kind of on the precipice here of a big move. So I'm looking forward to what the rest of this year brings. So hang in there, and it's been fun talking to you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments here or join us on Telegram, and let's talk about it a little bit. Thanks, guys. See you next week. The material and information presented in this recording are for entertainment purposes only. Do not misconstrue what you hear as investment or trading advice. Always do your own research. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the guests on this recording are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Dad's Gone Crypto or its hosts.